Okay, Dream Think Doers. Oh my gosh, get ready. Today, my guest is Jheri South. And buckle up, my friend, because we are going to dig into a wildly important subject we've never focused on in over 400 episodes of Dream Think Do. And I can tell you, it is time. Jheri describes her life as an ADHD adventure filled with chaos, creativity, and a fair amount of caffeine. Hello. Yes. All right. She is the mom of 7 neurodivergent kids that she loves very much. And when Jheri was diagnosed with ADHD herself as an adult, she decided to reinvent herself to harness ADHD as a superpower. I love that. And now she's taken her real life experiences and paired that with some serious training. And now she is helping countless individuals and families walk through some of the toughest seasons of life and come out stronger. She's a certified master coach, speaker, and ADHD specialist. Jheri helps teens, parents, entire families navigate ADHD, anxiety, autism. It's a long list because she's so freaking passionate. As you'll hear, she brings tangible strategies, powerful mindset shifts, and a good dose of humor to these important subjects. Jheri and I connected through a mutual friend, Stan Gibson. Shout out, Stan. And as I started to dive into her content, I realized I felt convicted that we never had a wildly important conversation about ADHD and it's how it impacts the way that we can dream bigger, think better, and do more, and the way that we help our kids to navigate those things as well. So I'm really authentically stoked to dig into this. So Jheri, welcome to Dream Think Do.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. Hopefully we still have time to talk.
I know, right? Exactly right. I always say my gift to my guest is a good intro, for crying out loud. You deserve it. But seriously,
fantastic.
as I dove into this stuff, I was fascinated. I love your content because you are teaching from your journey, from your personal journey with your kiddos, of yourself, all of those things. But you also have really grown an incredible tribe of people that you are helping to navigate these wildly, important and rough waters, right? So I told you, I've got like 72 different questions. So I think we'll, hopefully get to as many of them as possible, but
we'll get through 2 at least.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So let's talk about you for a second, because as I heard about your story, again, you have had a varied background. You were a trainer within the corporate world. You owned your own dance studio. You've had a lot of different activities, a lot of different endeavors, which I love. And then you were diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. So tell me about that. What was that like? And what made you kind of say, maybe I should get checked out?
Well, okay. So actually, I never had the thought maybe I should go checked out for ADHD until I was told that I should. So it's interesting. Your audience will relate with this. I didn't really understand what ADHD looked like other than I thought it was, I don't like calling it a disorder, but that's what they do refer to it as
medically,
a disorder.
They can call it that. I love that you refer to it as a superpower because it really can be. If you understand it, it can be, but yes.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so grateful that I have ADHD and we can talk about that. But I just thought it was a disorder of being hyperactive, not being able to do well in school, just kind of the stereotypical, that there was a day that they didn't believe that girls could have ADHD. I mean, that's how much they thought it was just a disorder for boys, little boys, and they thought it was a childhood disorder. Now the average age of diagnosis is 31. This is no longer looked at as a childhood disorder.
No kidding. That's incredible. Wow. Okay.
It's usually a parent sitting in the doctor's office listening to the evaluation going, wait, what?
Yeah, they're talking about their child going, wait, you just described me. You described my childhood, my adulthood last week.
Exactly. And so my sister had been struggling with some things. She actually had, hopefully she doesn't mind that I share this, but I think it's good for people to know because ADHD is associated with so many other things that we don't think about. But one of those things was a binge eating disorder. And my sister was trying to figure out what was going on there. And anyway, she was diagnosed with ADHD. And then she started sharing information. There's a doctor I absolutely love and look up to. It's Dr. William Dodson. And he had some great material on rejection sensitivity dysphoria and just all kinds of different things and why it's missed in women and adult ADHD. And it blew my mind. And so, of course, one by one, my family members, because it does run in families, started getting diagnosed. But now my life is making sense because there are definitely, and we can get into the superpower part, but on the debilitating side, I did struggle with the things that we hear about in school and math. Most ADHDers aren't good at math and focus and things like that. But I really struggled with emotional dysregulation, especially in my 20s, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. 1/3 of all adults today struggle. They say that RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, is the number one debilitating symptom they deal with. And I had never heard anything like this before, but I knew, I could remember how internally how dysfunctional I felt. I would feel like I was being clawed from the inside out at times. It was just so difficult for me. Even though outside I was masking and acting fine, I was struggling. So looking back and being able to realize, oh, my goodness, all of my life makes sense now. And so it makes the hard things that you go through harder. I was a single mother of 6 children for a long time. I reinvented myself quite a bit in life. And even though I was successful at that, it felt painful a lot of the time. And so just really making sense of my impairments that were associated with ADHD that I never really understood. So it just made it harder to work through. There's a lot of comparison that goes on. How come everybody else seems to be handling this so well and I'm not, or these things are so difficult for me to do and it doesn't seem like other people really struggle with these same things? There's a lot of impact in a negative way to self-esteem when you have ADHD.
So how was that, to get diagnosed as an adult? I mean, it sounds like maybe some of your family was having some of the same experience, so maybe that had an impact. But what do you think? Because you have helped a lot of folks. You're currently helping a lot of folks, whether it's their kiddos or themselves, deal with this. What are some of those first? What's the experience like of getting diagnosed as an adult with ADHD?
I would say for me and for a lot of individuals, it actually is kind of nice to know.
Yeah.
Because I'm not big on labels. I'm definitely not someone who believes in using it as a crutch, but I do think labels can be a great tool and very necessary, especially when we talk about teenagers, by the way. They're engaging in self-harm and then they realize, oh, I'm not broken. It's just my wiring and I can overcome my wiring. It's very helpful. But for me, I was really happy to understand myself better because it doesn't take anything away. I mean, I still have things that are debilitating. I still have things that I'm good at. But what I like about neurodivergence in general, whether it's ADHD or autism, is that we have so much information about how our neurological system operates differently. Yeah. It works quite well once you learn how to work it, once you learn how to operate it. Where everybody's dealing with something. And we actually have an owner's manual now that we can understand better. And so it really helped me more quickly. I feel like one of the gifts that I have as an ADHDer is once I get excited or I pick up on something, I go with it. And so things just started to click. I was able to overcome the things that weren't working, make sense of, I could separate, in other words, the wiring from my personality and realize, at no fault of my own, some of these things were getting in the way. I sort of just learned how to deal and overcome. But now I understand it. I just felt so much better about myself.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and that's, as I was digging into some of your stuff, I'm like, well, maybe I should get checked because I'm like, boy,
hey,
I can
Mitch,
really relate.
I have a free ADHD quiz on my site.
I love that. I saw that. I haven't taken it yet, but I signed up for some other things. But I felt like what you were doing. I like to go to Lowe's or Home Depot, and you see these tool chests, these amazing tool chests. These $2,000, $3,000 tool chests with the wheels on them. But I do feel like you're a person that wheels out. Like if somebody gets diagnosed, it feels like you're wheeling out a tool chest, going, "You're not broken. You just need a new tool chest," right? Like, and that's what I feel like you're doing for people. And I love that. That's why I want to have this conversation, because especially when it comes to dream, think, do, we want to help people dream bigger, think better, do more of what they're put on the planet to do. And of course, we want listeners to do that for themselves, but we also want them to be able to do that for those and with those around them and their kids, right? And as I looked at your content and the things you teach on, I'm like, oh my gosh, when it comes to dreaming, when it comes to thinking, when it comes to doing, all of these things are impacted. And honestly, when I think about that toolbox that you wheel out, I'm like, even if you're not considered neurodivergent, a lot of the tools that you suggest are usable for everybody. Like we can all benefit from a lot of the tools that you're talking about. So let's talk about dreaming first, because I think this is really important because like you talk about with ADHD specifically, there are some weaknesses, there are some things you have to work with, some challenges, but there are some strengths to this as well. So when it comes to dreaming and kind of thinking about life and goals and what you might want to do or experience or achieve in life, when it comes to ADHD, what are some of the things that come naturally? Like where are ADHDers better than maybe normal people when it comes to dreaming? Let's start there.
Well,
what
me
are some of the
just
strengths?
tell
Where does it
you.
lend itself? Yeah.
Well, I want to highlight the fact that ADHDers, and I also want to say something real quickly too, is that ADHD has a very high comorbidity rate. So always when I'm putting things out on the internet, like if I talk about how terrible we are with time, there'll be people that get out there and say, I have ADHD and I'm so great at time.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm just talking about ADHD. There's a high comorbidity rate. So anxiety or OCD or other things will sometimes overlap and all of this doesn't fit. But just the ADHDer, which to my knowledge, I do not have a comorbid condition, but most of my children do. So when it comes to ADHDers and emotions, we are such intense feelers. I could start thinking about something that happened 10 years ago and I can feel almost exactly the same way today as I did 10 years ago. And so because we're always using our emotions to make decisions, we know impulsivity is a big thing.
Right.
We are huge dreamers. We're always imagining things that maybe aren't possible or believing we can do things that most people would say that we can't do. And I would actually attribute most of my success to the fact that I just totally wasn't living in reality and I just went for things that nobody
You just
could believe
went
I
and
went
did it
through
anyway.
and I got it. Right? I put it out there and I was like, I can definitely do this.
Yeah,
And people are
absolutely.
going, what are you doing? And it worked.
Jheri, come back here. Yeah.
So I would say when it comes to dreaming specifically, this is a strength for ADHDers because we do imagine things. I would say usually like somebody on the outside might, my brother, he might describe me as someone who doesn't think things through, doesn't always live in reality, where I would say, no, I'm just willing to go out there and see what happens. I'll just throw everything at the wall. I have no problem taking risks. It doesn't matter if it's my reputation or it's money, or I could look like a fool in the interview. If I want to do it, where the average person will, like I'm referencing my brother because he's one of the smartest people that I know. And he does things the right way and he's very successful, but he would take a lot of time. If he had an interview coming up, he would want to make sure that this actually happened because I had a radio show on KTAR and I was trying to get him later a position that I heard was open. And he spent a lot of time researching, investigating, making sure he's the right fit, wanting to know about the person who's going to be interviewing him. And by the time he did all of that, the position had been filled. And it didn't even take very long, but it was like a very popular, this doesn't happen very often. I would never do that. My brain does not do that. If there's a position, my thought is, if I can get in front of them, I can probably get it. And I would interview for things that you needed a degree and I didn't have one.
Yeah.
It did not matter to me at all. So I'm willing to just like take risks, dream big. If I want it, I'm going to find a way to get it. I am relentless and stubborn when it comes to what I want. So those are some of the strengths. But I will say, even though you haven't asked me yet, I think that I always think for every strength, there's a weakness. Where ADHDers will get stuck is we're very impatient. And so most of my clients are especially as an adult, and they're trying to reinvent themselves. That's what I was coaching on primarily before I even did ADHD behavioral coaching. Most of my ADHD coaches or coaching clients, though, get stuck in, I don't know what to do, because there's so many things they want to do. There's so many things they're excited about. They have so many ideas. This is one of the big impairments with ADHDers is making a decision and knowing how to move forward. So when I look at dream, think, do, I feel like a lot of ADHDers get stuck between dreaming and thinking and don't know how
to that transition, right? To be able to go, oh, there are so many things I could do. There are so many things I want to do. So the dreaming part, the beginning really is a superpower, because a lot of super analyticals don't give themselves that permission, that space to dream, right? So that is a strength. But making that transition to then pick one and then decide on a path and a strategy and then to take action. So that's big. So
it can feel paralyzing, actually,
right?
Like very intense.
100%. And what's funny is that, like we talked about off mic, like sometimes that can get misdiagnosed as procrastination. Sometimes that can get misdiagnosed as perfectionism, but it really might be that ADHD hiding in there. So let's talk about that for just a second. If it's for yourself, or maybe you see that in your kiddo, that they are quick to dream, like, oh, I'd love to do that, or identify something a trip they'd like to take, or something they'd like to do. But then, boy, they're just as quick to get locked up on that first step or that next step. What's a good way? What have you found that works for you? Because obviously you're getting a lot of stuff done, right? So what's been something that's worked for you, and or what's something that you found has helped parents help their kids navigate this?
Okay, so this is a great question, because before I answer the question, we want to understand what is the impairment. And just a little quick, I want to put a little message out there. This is why I believe so strongly for neurodivergent individuals to do neurodivergent coaching, because a lot of times we'll go right to setting goals or having strategies without understanding why are we stalling out. That's really important. And this is where ADHDers will really struggle with their own identity as far as self-confidence and what they're capable of, because internally they know that they're smart, they're creative, they're risk takers. Typically they see the solutions to problems more quickly than the average person, but then they're not propelling forward. They're just not putting things into, like, nothing's coming to fruition. And so we want to understand how important dopamine is when it comes to getting going on anything. We also want to know or understand that boredom is one of the most overwhelming emotions for an ADHDer. So my teenagers that I'll work with, the clients, if they're bored with their life or whatever's happening, they'll say things like, my life has no purpose. I don't even feel like I want to be alive, because boredom is an overwhelming emotion for ADHDers. There's an acronym I use with my clients. It's NICUP. And the reason I have my clients memorize it is because there is a difference between the way a neurotypical neurological system works and a neurodivergent neurological system works. So for an average neurotypical person, if something's important or there's going to be a reward at the end, they can usually sit down and get whatever task in front of them there is, they can get it done. But when you have ADHD, your brain does not work that way. That's utterly useless for an ADHDer. So there either has to be something that's novelty, interesting, a challenge or competition, urgency, this is why we're doing things at 11 o'clock at night before it's due, or passion. And if one of those 5 things is not present, your brain will not work. And so what I'm constantly working on with myself or my children, because you'll see this time and time again with ADHDers, they have a list of unfinished projects. They get all excited about something. They buy all of the tools or whatever's necessary for their hobby, and then they don't do it. They are not consistent because the dopamine runs out, because it's no longer novelty. They're not interested in it. There's no longer anything challenging. It's not urgent, or they're not passionate anymore. And so constantly working to inject one of those 5 things into whatever I'm doing. It's not enough just to ask an ADHD teenager, well, why is this important? Why do you want to do it? That's a good place to start. But then we want to pay attention to our own patterns. We have an overall general manual. This is how our brain works. But what's going to be interesting or novelty or even challenging to you, Mitch, is going to be different than myself. So one of the things we're constantly working on is you come up with your own owner's manual, so you understand your brain, you know how to hyperfocus, you know how to stay hyperfocused. So some of my strategies are, like when it comes to challenge or competition, I really like using timers. I like something really silly, but I absolutely hate, and I mean hate, and I don't ever really use that word. I hate it. I hate cleaning my bathroom. I hate it so much. But if I tell myself on a Saturday, I'm going to get my bathroom clean, we all know that's not going to happen. I might get even everything else clean, but the bathroom doesn't get clean because I'm in and out. But if I say, okay, I'm going to turn on my timer for 20 minutes and whatever I get done, and I don't care. all of a sudden my brain's like, I'm going to get it done in 18
Game
minutes.
on. Let's
I
go.
do this
It's now
every
a
week
challenge.
and it
Yeah.
works every week. So it's just a matter, whether it's business or it's silly things like the bathroom, really understanding your brain and how to inject one of those 5 things in there with your teenagers too. And one last thing I'll say about that is, I work with a lot of parents. I work with parents and teens. Communication is so huge because the way we talk to our children, like, why aren't you doing this? Why did you give up? I thought you cared about this. They're thinking the same thing. I don't know. I don't know why I cared and now I don't. I don't know why I can't just do it. So it becomes detrimental to their self-confidence when they know they're disappointing the people around them. They're disappointing themselves. They can't answer the question why. As adults, we want to teach them why. We want to show them how to use their brain for success.
Yep, absolutely. And I can only imagine wheeling out this toolbox. I would imagine it helps people feel equipped, but I would imagine it would also give people a language to be like the nick up, to be able to go, okay, here's the thing we want to do. Here's the thing you want to achieve or get done, right? How do we want to inject a little novelty? How can we inject a little challenge? How can we inject a little passion? Those kinds of things. I would imagine that can really be a powerful thing. When you are helping a kiddo, because I love bathroom, in the bathroom, doing your taxes, right? Like any of those things. Like,
don't say the T word, Mitch. I just barely got done with mine. I'm like impressed with myself.
This is what I'm talking about, right? Like I know exactly what you're talking about. But with a teenager, what might that look like if they have a goal of whether it's doing well in school, but maybe they have a personal dream of pursuing something like a martial art or getting into that play or getting onto that team. What's another example of nick up in a goal like that for a kiddo?
Well, let's say that they want to try out for a team. I like to get really clear on the circumstance so I can speak to it. So they want to try out for a team, but maybe they don't feel totally prepared or ready. To be honest, I mean, one of the most helpful things is to get clear about what they're actually scared of. Most ADHDers, I would say, I would be confident saying probably 95% of ADHDers have either imposter syndrome or they really struggle with self-confidence. And one of the reasons is because by age 10, the average ADHD child has heard over 20,000 corrective messages. Why can't you sit still? Why can't you work harder? Why didn't you get that done? Your sister can do it. Why can't you do it? And so that's causing problems in addition to there's so much masking and comparison going on at school years. And so there's usually fears there of what people are going to think about them or they're not good enough. And so anything that we can do to speak to their self-confidence and help prove to themselves that they're good, whether we're out there on the court with them or we're getting them a private lesson or we're just helping them dissect their thoughts and prove that their thoughts aren't true, that's always going to be the most powerful thing. But when it comes to just setting goals, ADHDers are known for go big or go home, which I love, by the way. I'm not knocking that.
That is my jam, right? Yeah.
I'm not knocking it, but it has not served me well in life because I'm impatient and I'm impulsive. And so if I need to lose 20 pounds, I want to lose it in 20 days.
Right.
And, if I'm going to make money.
I should be able to do that, right?
But why can't I? And now challenge accepted. But what will happen is I'll burn out or then I'll feel like a failure and I'll quit because in 10 days I've only lost 2 pounds and now I'm frustrated. And so teenagers whose prefrontal cortex is not finished developed, adults are struggling with this. So they're really going to struggle. And another thing I want to put out there is that the true executive function age of an ADHD child is actually 3 years younger than they are. So if you have a 16-year-old who wants to make a team, they're really going to function at the executive functioning level of a 13-year-old. So that helps us understand how many more reminders, help with processes and systems, because most adults by that time are saying, you're old enough, you should be taking care of it. Don't say that. Don't say that to them, right? It's just creating a more problem for their self-confidence. And anything I say to not say, I said to my kids. So I've done everything wrong.
I love your message. I've heard it so many times of give yourself grace for what's happened in the past. Start fresh, right? Start today. Maybe even acknowledge, maybe even apologize for those things because you didn't know, right? And it could be even self-talk. Like, how are you talking to yourself, but also how are you talking to your kids or your friend or your sister or whatever, to be able to say, all right, give yourself some grace. You didn't know. Now you know. So let's start
100%.
today,
There's no
right?
place for shame. We
Yeah,
can't,
that's
we do not
exactly
evolve
right.
into the best version of ourselves when we feel shame or regret. We have to get to a place of neutrality to solve our problems. And I'll tell parents, you cannot help your child if you're the victim. And you're the victim as soon as you feel bad for yourself. So we want to get to neutrality, and we want to understand that we did the best with what we knew, but now what are we going to do about it? Kind of exciting. But when it comes to like hitting a goal, for example, I'll teach. I was teaching for the Sheriff's Youth Redirection Program out here for a few years. And one of the classes I did was a goal setting class. And so kids do have big dreams, whether it's making a team or a lot of them want to become a professional athlete. What we want to do is really help them narrow it down to just 30 days at a time. And what I do with them is I have them write out everything that they would have to do in that 30 days, whether it's wake up early and work out or change their diet, all of the things that they have to do. And then we go through all the obstacles that could get in the way. I like to eat junk food, whatever it is. I stay up late on my phone and I play games when I need more sleep. And then we come up with strategies to overcome every obstacle. But for these kids, we want to figure out, okay, what is every child will struggle with different things. Some of them struggle with impulsivity. Some of them struggle with just a lack of motivation. And so figuring out what that is and then looking at Nick up and saying, okay, so you really want to make the team, but you have a hard time getting yourself up and practicing. So what we want to do is we want to provide dopamine into every activity. And also, when I say rewards don't work for ADHDers, that's not entirely true. What I mean by that is if you have math homework to do and I say, hey, if you finish your math homework, we'll go get ice cream, they're just going to think, great, now I'm not going to get my math homework done, and now I'm not going to get ice cream. But if the reward comes from Nick Up, if there's something they really want, like they want to go to a game in a couple of weeks, then it's like, okay, I'll tell you what. How many times do we need to be practicing a week? Okay, let's time block it. Everyone, kids and adults with ADHD, they want to know, how long is this going to take? What's involved? When will I be done? So we'll wait and see, we're almost finished, Saturday chores, there's a lot to do. That's torture for them. So we want to show their brain, if they're sitting in front of something and we say, oh, we're going to have to practice on Saturday, they're going to think this is going to take forever. But if we say, okay, how about this? We'll practice for 30 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break and do these things. And then we'll practice for another 30 minutes and we'll use the timer to do that. Then their brain says, okay, I can do that. And if there's a reward, hey, if you do this every week, we want to not wait until the end of the month for a reward. So let's say that the reward is that he is going to get to go to this game at the end of the month. He still needs a daily dopamine hit and a weekly dopamine hit. So it could be points, it could be poker chips to add up points, it could be monetary, so that he gets to add them up at the end of each day for doing what he was going to do. And then at the end of the week, he has the opportunity. You could use these points now and you could go get something that you want, or you could save them to go to the game. We just want to help put processes in place for our kids. Depending on the age, you don't need as much support. You might need more support. Help them break down why this isn't so overwhelming. Their brain is probably not mature enough to say, I need to go out and practice, so I will. But if you give them an immediate reason why, if I do this, I get my 5 points, and my dad's going to come with me, or afterwards I get to go to my favorite restaurant, or at the end of the week, they're going to take me where I really want to go if I do this for 4 days this week. Now their brain has a reason why that's giving them immediate dopamine. And I think that's the biggest mistake that parents make, is they're like, hey, at the end of the quarter, if you have good grades,
kind of dangle the big
no
carrot.
way.
It's like,
they last 3
we got to
days.
gamify it. Yeah, it's exactly right. So good. And you know what's funny is, as I was diving into this again, I saw myself in it over and over. But a big part of what I do in our business is I'm a success coach. And a lot of the folks that I coach are founders, CEOs, executives. And it's incredible the number of founders, people, entrepreneurs who start businesses. Like, I am sure many of them are undiagnosed. But like, to go, oh my gosh, this set of tools, for sure. And also why so many entrepreneurs and founders have a trail of bodies behind them, because they're not aware of what they're doing, right? Like, it's just that. So I love that. So in digging into your content, again, you bring up so many great little tools and strategies that anybody can benefit from. But one of the things you talked about that relates to what we've just been talking about for ADHD people is you talked about the concept of time blindness. And this one was like, ooh, both convicting and revealing and powerful, because we all probably have a little element of time blindness. But when I realized you were talking about that and going either as a parent or a spouse or a friend, a person that has time blindness, especially with somebody with ADHD, might drive you freaking crazy. And you're like, you're broken, get it fixed. But they're completely blind to us. So talk to us about time blindness, and then we'll talk about how do we navigate it. So let's talk time blindness. Yeah.
I don't say this on many people's podcasts, but can I just say it drives me crazy when people have to be on time? Can we talk about that? It drives me nuts. Like, what's the big deal?
Right.
And so you'll hear people say like, oh, it's just so inconsiderate when someone is late. And I think, I never considered that before, because that's not what I'm thinking when I'm late. What I'm thinking when I'm late is I'm so glad I wasn't sitting here 10 minutes early, because I got so much done in that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Again,
what'd you do with the 10 minutes?
I got a lot done. Well, it ended up being 20 minutes because I was late, but I got a lot done. And you know what's torture, what's boring and horrible is sitting somewhere for 10 minutes before it starts. That's one of the worst things, honestly. I'd rather clean my bathroom. But when it comes to time,
and is that would you say it's I know it's dangerous to make sweeping statements, but when you talk with all of the people that are dealing with ADHD, would you say that is almost a universal experience? The sitting and waiting for 5 minutes, like that?
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, it's
because I know for me, like I grew up, my dad was a retired Marine and a warden in a prison. My mom was an accountant. So if the Matthews boys were 15 minutes early, that meant we were probably 5 minutes late. Right. So that was kind of ingrained in me. But so the thought of waiting 15 minutes, I'm like, that's just what you do. But to hear that with somebody with ADHD, that would be torture. That was hugely revealing to me.
I can't even relate when you say that's just what you do. I'm like, who does that? I mean, that's really what I think.
Why would you do that? Yeah.
Why would anybody do that? And I know there's people that do that. And I have learned, and as I've gotten older, to be more considerate, not because I feel obligated to, and not because I consider it to be inconsiderate, but I recognize that some people really appreciate it. But I just don't. The thing is your brain focuses on what it cares about. So when someone's late, I don't care. I mean, obviously, if they're really late to an appointment with me or something, like I'm considerate to my appointments, but I'm just talking about bigger things. It's not a big deal to me.
Like
I'm not
life,
stressed out.
Right? Like, a friend, coffee, 5 minutes late, not a big deal. All those kinds of things.
I hate to say it,
whereas
but even
to me,
church,
I will say deep down inside, that's a thing. Like somebody shows up 5 minutes late, that pings me, right? So I've probably got other issues.
Well, when I do talk about this online, I will say that there are a lot of ADHDers that will come out and say, not me, I'm always 10 minutes early. And my first response will be, any chance that you have anxiety? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh yes. So it's not typical. And I'm really asking that in a serious way, because it is not typical for an ADHD person to stress about being on time or worry about being late. That sounds more like a comorbid condition of anxiety or OCD. Unless they grew up like you did, and this has just been ingrained in them. But when it comes to time blindness, we make the joke that ADHDers have 2 concepts of time, now and not now. And so if it doesn't fit in the now category, then it's just like off somewhere, and we'll worry about that later. But almost always, I mean, I drive my husband absolutely crazy, and he drives me crazy. I'm like, why are you stressing about that? I don't care. Right. And he cares. And so it's always this constant battle, but I drive him nuts. I'm always last minute. I'm always gathering all my things. I always think I have more time than I do. And it's funny because I'm 47, right? And I have lived this way my entire life. It's not like it gets better. You would think the average person, it's like if you're late all the time, everything, now that if you have to be somewhere at 11 and you're still lying down at 10:50, you're not going to be there on time. But my brain doesn't think that. I start panicking when I get in my car and I'm already late, because now I'm going to be more late. So this is a common problem where we especially with hyperfocus too, 6 hours can feel like 30 minutes. Just always believing, how much time that we'll have to get ready, to get somewhere. I do think it drives people crazy. And it seems to be across the board an ADHD issue that our brain just struggles with time blindness.
Yeah. And I so appreciate that. And I would imagine that some people are like, oh, that describes my friend so much, or describes my spouse so much. And I do appreciate the fact that, like, what you're saying is you don't just get better at this with age or experience. You either have to choose. Like, I would imagine, because you are a professional, you showed up on time for our session here today, right?
I think I was like a minute or two early. Thank you very much.
I think you were, for crying
in my
out
head,
loud.
I was giving myself a standing ovation. I just didn't tell you.
Exactly. You were celebrating. So, like, for those, what is it, especially for somebody that's either coaching or encouraging somebody with ADHD, standing to the side of somebody with ADHD, what are some of the strategies? What is some of the toolbox? What's in the toolbox when it comes to helping somebody with time blindness? And maybe we'll talk about, like, what works for you. But when you're encouraging someone and you really, really need to be somewhere, or there is a schedule to going after this dream or goal, what's a tool for the toolbox for that person's walking alongside?
It's a great question, but I just want to say the first thing that came to my mind is that one thing that definitely isn't a tool if I'm working with clients is to get them to think about what other people might be thinking, because that is not the reason we want to have transformation. Of course, if we're going to a job interview and we're talking about making a good impression, that might be a little bit different conversation. So I made the joke that I've worked on being more on time because I know how people can view it and I want to be respectful. But I don't want the reason that we make changes as an ADHD person because of what people think about us, because we spend our whole life tormented about what people think about us.
That's huge.
About being worried about we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, constantly comparing and usually not talking about it to anybody. And so, for example, the temptation, not me, this isn't me, but the temptation for a client, if let's just say they heard you say, oh, it drives me crazy when people are late, their temptation would be to now people please and think, oh no, I don't want him to hate me. I don't want him to not like me. He thinks that's rude and inconsiderate. I've got to be on time. Now they're not operating from a place of making changes because they want to be a different version of themselves. They're making changes because they want you to not be mad at them or they want you to like them. So I just wanted to put that out there for everyone listening, that that's not the direction we'd go. It always comes down to what's the reason why. And what I like to focus on always with ADHDers is their self-confidence. One of the main reasons that we lack self-confidence is when we're not consistent in our life. And ADHDers really struggle with this, because it's true for everybody, but being consistent means people can count on you. You know you're going to follow through. You're going to get the job done. ADHDers struggle with this because they don't understand their brain. Sometimes they're hyper-focusing and they're knocking things out of the park. And other times they're sitting there in paralysis trying to figure out what's wrong with them. So if we are not consistent, we want to work on being consistent. For me, it's that I have decided in the future who I am, who I'm becoming, and what that means, that the way that I view myself, what it means to be professional in my field. And so I've developed a really important why for showing up a certain way as a professional in my business. So getting really clear on, if you want to be on time, what's the reason you want to be on time? I'm really bad at being late to church because church is optional. I always go, but It's like if I show up 10 minutes late, nobody cares. I had to really sit down with my thoughts and recognize I always feel bad, even though I get there every day late. I feel bad that I'm late because I would like to show myself I can be on time. I'd like to sit there in reverence. There's some things I sometimes miss. So when you have a good enough why, you can make changes. The issue with ADHDers is they're terrible at self-appraisal. And by the way, anyone who's listening who has ADHD, I always get pushback. No, I'm not. I'm so intuitive. I know myself inside and out. What I mean by that is we are not very good at analyzing our behavior and figuring out how to really fix it. And so we keep in the same patterns. We keep doing the same things. And so it requires us to really sit down, write things out. Don't just keep it in our head, and figure out what's the reason why I would change this. If it's just because somebody told me it's rude, or it's because I think someone's going to be mad at me, that's probably not a good enough reason. If the reason is who I'm becoming, that I'm missing out on something, I think it would bring me more peace. I like this reason or that reason. Okay, now we have something to work with. So I would say in my life, I've just come up with lots of reasons why. And by the way, no offense to anybody if I'm late to you. It's not that I don't care about you, but really, I mean, it really comes down to what my brain has chosen to focus on. And there are things that are more important than others.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I think, I would imagine that you have to make the choice. Like, you're not going to be on time for everything. Probably no one is, but you have to choose what are those things I'm going to intentionally be on time for. But I will say I also really appreciate, because when I was watching your training online, I realized like, oh yeah, that is kind of douchey for me to just assume that everybody thinks the way I do, right? Like to go, well, of course everybody's going to be on time. And for you to like just be equally offended, like everybody will assume on time is the only way to think, right? I'm like, you know what? I needed to hear that. So it is.
Well, I don't think you're douchey. I don't think you're douchey.
Well, yeah, some days. But I what I love about this is, again, it's something we can all apply. But I think when you hear about it, to go, oh, that explains so much in my own behavior, or that explains so much in this person that really means a lot to me. All of those things. So I think it's so powerful. And I knew we would not get to all my questions, but this is just proof positive. We got to have you back, because we got to go even further into this conversation. But I've got to wrap this one up. We got to wrap this one up for the sake of time. But for that person, because I'm guessing that somebody listening to this maybe either heard you, Jheri, and said, oh my gosh, that describes me, or my gosh, that describes my friend, or that describes my kiddo. Where's the best place to start for somebody that goes, I think maybe I need to lean into this a little bit? Where do you say they should begin that journey?
Well, okay, so you could go to my website and take an ADHD quiz. And it's not, I didn't make it up, which would have been kind of cool, but it actually came.
Someday, right.
It would have been like really entertaining, right? Like, dude, how good are you at balancing on one leg? But it comes from straight from evaluations from some of the top specialists and the way that they look at ADHD. Again, it's not attached to any of them, but that's where I gathered the questions. So by taking that, even though I can't give you an official diagnosis, it will give you a really good idea of where you fall. I have 7 neurodivergent children. So 6 of them have ADHD, 5 of them are on the spectrum. So this is my life. Most of them are adults now. And ADHD comes with a lot of comorbidity. And the other thing was that most of my kids were not hyper at all. I was very surprised that everyone seemed to have ADHD. It can potentially really start to manifest once they become teenagers or they start going through, hormonal changes. And so it's, in my opinion, it's not a good idea to say, oh, we'll wait until it becomes a problem. I've even heard doctors suggest that. I don't agree with that at all. We didn't get into it, but my experience was once it became a problem, it was a huge problem because there's so much overlap. A lot of the kids I work with are holding things in for years. They're experiencing suicidal ideation. It can be a lot more extreme than parents are aware of. The statistics show that only 93% of psychiatrists today even know how to properly treat ADHD. Autism is missed almost all of the time, and it can be difficult to get good treatment, whether you want to do medication or not. So I highly recommend you can go somewhere, CHAD.org. It's CHAAD.org. There's a chapter in every state so that you can look up the chapter and connect with people who know specialists who really know what they're doing, understand medication, can give a good evaluations. The other thing is learning about things like rejection sensitivity dysphoria, because as a parent, it's so important that you learn how to communicate differently with your child. Of course, I do behavioral coaching, so I think that's the most important part of the treatment, but definitely don't delay. Find someone who specializes. If someone specializes in everything, maybe find a doctor that really specializes in ADHD, because they are going to want to catch some of that comorbidity. And then go from there. I had children, like my son is on the spectrum. I had him evaluated. I didn't ever tell the school until he was a junior and things really started to be difficult. So you can do whatever you want with this information, but having it and having an official diagnosis can be incredibly helpful when you need it.
It's so true. And it does allow you to wheel out that toolbox that would probably help all of us, like any child, any adult. But having that toolbox, just again, diving into your content, I'm like, gosh, this is gold, especially like you said, for so many kiddos that are hurting, for so many parents that are hurting, to be able to have a set of tools, but also to be able to realize they're not alone. This is so wildly important. So I can't wait to have part 2 of this conversation. But Jheri, thank you so much for bringing the gold, but also for the good that you're doing in the world, because it's so, so important. And we'll send everybody your direction. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been great.